moving, just saying the word out loud it's honestly enough to make your blood pressure spike, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's right up there with getting a divorce or changing jobs as one of life's absolute biggest stressors.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But, people keep doing it.
They do.
Usually for a better job, maybe for love, or honestly just a change of scenery.
It's just kind of this great paradox, right? We completely hate the process.
The boxes.
Right, the boxes, the movers, standing in line at the DMV, but we really love the idea of the fresh start.
Yeah, the clean slate.
Exactly. And it is high stakes because if you get it wrong, well, you are stuck in a lease in a city you completely hate.
Which is the ultimate nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to today's deep dive. We're looking at a very specific relocation target today. One that, and I have to be completely honest here, I usually just associate with, fast cars and maybe cornfields.
Which is fair.
Right.
Yeah.
We are talking about Indianapolis.
That really is the classic stereotype.
It is. But according to the source material we are digging into today, I am apparently way behind the times.
A little bit, yeah.
So we have this guide called the Indianapolis Relocation Roadmap, a guide for professionals. It is put out by Nook, which is a local co-working space and private office provider there.
Right.
And they are essentially making the case that Indy is quietly becoming this absolute powerhouse for professionals, specifically people who want to escape the coastal grind.
Which is a lot of people right now.
Exactly. But our mission today is to figure out, is this just marketing fluff from a co-working space? Or is there actually a tactical, real-world reason why talent is moving there? We want to give you, the listener, the actual execution plan, from picking a neighborhood to, finding a doctor.
And we definitely need to look past the brochure here, but the data does suggest a very real migration pattern.
Yeah.
The roadmap frames Indianapolis as the crossroads of America. Now, historically, that just meant it was where a bunch of interstate highways intersected.
Literally just a geographic fact.
Right. But in this context, they are arguing it is this unique intersection of opportunity and charm. A blend of a really high quality of life with actual career growth.
Okay, let's test that opportunity part first. Because usually when people talk about moving from the coasts to the Midwest, the big headline is always just, it's cheap.
Yeah.
And sure, cheap is great. But if you move somewhere and your career completely stalls out because there are no jobs, then cheap really doesn't help you.
You are hitting on the exact fear that coastal professionals have. It is this fear of career suicide.
Like you just drop off the map.
Exactly. Like if I leave San Francisco or New York or Chicago, do I just vanish from my industry?
Yeah.
But the key insight from the roadmap is that Indy is actually functioning as a career accelerator.
Okay, how does that actually work?
It comes down to market saturation. Think about a place like Boston or the Bay Area. You are competing with thousands of people who have the exact same resume as you for every single mid-level management role.
It is a total logjam.
It is. But in a market like Indianapolis, the talent pool is inherently smaller.
Right.
Which means highly skilled professionals who move there often find themselves jumping into C-suite or director-level roles way faster than they ever would on the coasts.
So you are basically a bigger fish in a pond that isn't quite as crowded.
Precisely. And the pond itself is actually really fascinating. You joked about cornfields earlier, but the economic reality of Indy is what economists refer to as a three-legged stool.
Meaning it is stable.
Right. The economy isn't completely reliant on just one single sector.
Which is huge because we have all seen what happens to cities that are just tech cities or just manufacturing cities.
Detroit being the classic example.
Right. When that one specific sector crashes, the whole town just goes under.
Exactly. But Indianapolis has a really diverse lineup of heavy hitters headquartered right there. You have Eli Lilly, which is a massive global player in pharmaceuticals.
Life sciences.
Then you have IU Health anchoring the healthcare side. You have Salesforce absolutely dominating the tech scene downtown.
Okay.
And then you still have huge advanced manufacturing and logistics operations like Rolls-Royce. Wow. Okay. So the implication here is pure economic resilience. Even during periods of national economic uncertainty, the local job market holds steady. If tech takes a dive, the life sciences and healthcare sectors kind of buffer the blow.
So your house value doesn't just tank because one specific industry had a bad quarter.
Exactly. And on top of that resilience, there is a very welcoming, community-focused vibe. It makes it a lot easier for newcomers to actually plug into that diverse economy quickly.
Okay, so the job market is stable, it is diverse, and you might even get promoted faster.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the money. The guide definitely leads heavily with affordability. But again, I always wonder, is it just cheaper or is there a catch?
Well, the catch in a lot of places is that you get what you pay for. But the affordability data here really translates directly to a higher quality of life.
Because your salary goes further.
Right. Think about those coastal markets. In New York or San Francisco, 50 or even 60% of your income might just vanish into rent for a tiny apartment.
It is painful.
In Indy, the cost of living gap is just massive. It means you actually have purchasing power again. You are not just surviving in the city, you have the capital to actually enjoy what the city offers.
So you can actually afford the things you were working so hard for.
Exactly. You can afford the nice dinner out, the much bigger apartment, or even buying a house with an actual yard.
Okay, let's assume I am sold on the economics. I am packing up the U-Haul.
Let's do it.
Now I have to figure out where I am actually going to sleep.
Yeah.
And this section of the guide really felt like taking a neighborhood personality test.
Oh, it really is. Because Indianapolis is geographically very large, it is incredibly spread out. So your daily experience is going to depend entirely on which specific neighborhood you choose to drop your bags in.
So let's break this down. Let's say you are the person coming from a really dense urban city.
Yeah.
And you are terrified of the suburbs.
Right.
You want ultimate walkability. You want to walk to get your morning coffee. You want art galleries. You want theater. Where you going?
You are definitely looking downtown, specifically an area called Mass Ave, Massachusetts Avenue.
Okay, Mass Ave.
The guide describes it as the cultural corridor. It is very polished. This is where you are going to find those downtown lofts, high-end condos, independent boutiques, and just a really dense concentration of top-tier dining. Plus, you are right near the theaters and the sports arenas.
It sounds great, but what if you want something a little less polished, like maybe a bit more artsy or indie?
Then you are heading slightly southeast to Fountain Square.
Fountain Square.
Yes. It has a much more eclectic bohemian vibe.
Yeah.
You are going to find a lot of historic homes, vintage stores, and a really thriving independent music scene. It is definitely for the person who prioritizes that cool, artsy energy.
Got it. Now, what if you are right in the middle? You do not want a downtown condo, but you also do not want to be out in a sprawling suburb. You want a house, but you still want character.
That is where the historic neighborhoods come in. The guide highlights places like Meridian Kessler and Irvington.
Yeah.
These are perfect for people who want those beautiful, mature, tree-lined streets, older homes with tons of architectural character, and really strong, tight-knit community connections. You get a yard, but you are still very connected to the city core.
Okay, but I have to bring up the suburbs now, because whenever I read these national best places to live in America lists, I always see the Indianapolis suburbs mentioned.
Oh, constantly.
Carmel specifically. It feels like Carmel is always on those lists.
It is.
What is the draw there for families?
The draw for the suburbs, and we are talking about Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville, Westfield, Zionsville, Greenwood. The draw is space, safety, and incredible amenities.
Right.
Carmel consistently ranks at the top nationally because of its top-tier public schools and its massive network of trails.
Yeah.
And Fishers is right next door. It is incredibly fast-growing, has a very vibrant town center they have built up, and a surprisingly strong job base of its own.
So you do not even necessarily have to commute downtown if you live out there. Let's talk brass tacks about housing costs, though. What are we actually talking about for rent?
Across the metro area, the average rent is hovering right around $1,400 a month.
$1,400. I think I just heard our listeners in New York and LA collectively sighing.
It is a stark difference. Obviously, it varies depending on if you are in a luxury Mass Ave condo versus an older unit in Irvington, but that is the average.
Does the guide give any specific tactics for navigating that rental market?
It does, and there is a really important one. They suggest using platforms like Rent Cafe to heavily filter your search, not just for obvious things like pet policies, but for amenities and specifically utilities.
Why utilities? Is that Indy's specific issue?
It can be. The expert advice here is that you really need to look beyond just the sticker price of the rent, especially if you are looking at those gorgeous historic homes in Meridian Kessler or Fountain Square.
Because they are old.
Right. Heating and cooling a charming 100-year-old house can be astronomically expensive in the winter.
Oh, that makes sense.
So a place that looks like a total steal on paper might cost you a fortune to keep warm in January. You have to factor in those utility costs, check the parking situation, and honestly, read the reviews to gauge how responsive the property management is. And start early because the good units absolutely fly off the market.
That is a great tactical tip. All right, so you have your apartment sorted. Now you actually have to get to work.
Yes.
And this is where that Crossroads of America nickname comes back around, right? Because to me, that basically just implies we have a whole lot of highways.
It does imply that, and we have to be very realistic here about the commute reality. The host of the guide does not sugarcoat this. Indy is very much a car-dependent city.
But wait, I have read about public transit there. Don't they have the Red Line?
They do. The Red Line is a bus rapid transit system. And if you happen to live directly on that line and your office is also directly on that line, it is fantastic.
But that is a big if.
It is a huge if. For the vast majority of professionals, you are going to be driving. But the upside, and this is a major upside compared to the coasts, is that commutes are actually reasonable. You are almost always looking at a drive of under 30 minutes.
Which is nothing compared to sitting on the 405 in LA.
Exactly. If you live up in a suburb like Carmel but work downtown, you just have to expect to deal with parking garages or look into park and ride options. But you are moving at highway speeds, not sitting in gridlock.
Now, this brings up a really massive topic that our source, Brand Nook, focuses heavily on, and that is remote work. Because a lot of people relocating to Indy right now aren't actually taking local jobs. They are bringing their high-paying coastal jobs with them.
Exactly. They are geo-arbitraging.
Right. And the guide pivots pretty hard here into telling people you need to join a boutique co-working space. Now, obviously, Brand Nook provides private offices and co-working spaces. So we have to ask, is this just a self-serving sales pitch?
We definitely have to acknowledge their bias, right? They want you to rent a desk from them. But if you actually look at the psychology of relocating, the argument they make is incredibly solid.
Walk me through the problem they are trying to solve.
The core problem is isolation.
Oh.
If you move halfway across the country to a brand new city where you do not know a single soul and you just work from home in your spare bedroom every day, it is incredibly isolating.
You are basically living on an island.
You are. You don't get those natural water cooler moments to meet people.
And it blurs the lines, right?
Exactly. The mental health aspect is huge. A boutique co-working space provides a clear physical separation between home and work. That is so crucial when you don't have a dedicated, separate home office. It forces you to get out of the house.
So it is good for your brain, but what about the social benefit?
That is the secondary and maybe more important benefit. These spaces offer an immediate built-in network. You are suddenly surrounded by other freelancers, other remote workers, local entrepreneurs.
Potential friends?
Exactly. It completely shortcuts the awkwardness of trying to meet people. It really accelerates that sense of belonging in your new city.
That makes total sense. And speaking of belonging and living like a local, let's get into the lifestyle and integration side of things. What do you actually do when you shut your laptop for the weekend?
Well, the guide suggests starting by basically being a tourist in your own new city.
Okay, where do we start?
You have to mention sports. Indy is a massive sports town. You have the Colts playing at Lucas Oil Stadium downtown.
Right.
And, of course, the legendary Indy 500 at the Speedway, which, by the way, isn't just a race once a year. The Speedway has an incredible museum, and you can do track tours year-round.
Okay, so sports and racing are covered. What about culture?
The cultural institutions are fantastic. You have the Indianapolis Museum of Art at Newfields, which is a massive, beautiful campus. And if you have kids, the Children's Museum of Indianapolis is literally world-renowned. It is enormous.
I feel like everyone knows about the racing and the museums, but what actually surprised me the most in this source material was the heavy emphasis on the great outdoors.
Really?
Yeah, I do not typically think of central Indiana as an outdoor recreation hub.
Well, they have really maximized their geography. The guide points out some incredible assets. Downtown, you have the Canal Walk and the Cultural Trail, which beautifully connect all these different cultural districts so you can walk or bike between them safely.
And what about outside of downtown?
The big highlight is Eagle Creek Park. It is actually one of the largest municipal parks in the entire country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we are talking huge areas for boating, fishing, hiking. And then for pure daily lifestyle impact, you have to talk about the Munnan Trail.
I saw that mentioned. What exactly is the Munnan?
It is a specific paved trail that runs over 30 miles. It connects downtown Indy all the way up through Carmel and beyond. It is heavily used by runners, cyclists, people walking their dogs. It is basically a pedestrian highway that ties the city to the northern suburbs.
That sounds amazing. Okay, so you can bike the Munnan, you can go to the art museum, but we touched on this a bit with the co-working topic. Rebuilding a social circle is notoriously the hardest part of any relocation.
Without a doubt.
How does the roadmap suggest you actually integrate socially?
The tactical advice here revolves around specific districts and a specific mindset. For districts, you want to spend your afternoons hanging out on Mass Ave or experiencing the nightlife up in Broad Ripple.
Okay.
But the mindset piece is crucial. The guide acknowledges that building a network takes active work. You have to implement the say yes rule.
The say yes rule.
Yes, you have to attend local events. If you get an invitation to a neighborhood block party or a coworker's happy hour, you say yes. You have to put yourself out there.
Even when you are tired from unpacking.
Exactly. Use those co-working spaces to find workshops and networking events. And a great pro tip from the guide: ditch the tourist brochures and check out online guides for locals' recommended things to do. That is how you find the really authentic dive bars, the best local coffee shops, and the actual community hubs where you can strike up conversations.
Okay, so treat making friends almost like a part-time job for the first few months.
You really have to.
All right, before we wrap up, we need to cover segment 5 of our outline, the logistics checklist.
The fun stuff.
The incredibly boring but completely essential stuff you have to do when you move. What is the rapid-fire rundown from the guide?
Okay, rapid fire. First, you need to update your driver's license and vehicle registration at the Indiana Bureau of Motor Vehicles, the BMV.
BMV, got it.
Second, register to vote in your new state. Third, get your utilities set up well in advance of your move-in date.
Which is standard.
Yes, but the fourth point is the real critical warning from the guide: finding new healthcare providers.
Is there a shortage or something?
Not a shortage of doctors, but a backlog for new patients. Finding a primary care doctor and setting up specialists can take a surprisingly long time. The wait times just to get an intake appointment can be months.
Oh, wow.
So the expert advice is do not wait until you move to Indy and then start looking for a doctor. Start making those calls and establishing care the moment you sign your lease. That way, your appointments will be ready for you shortly after you actually arrive.
That is a phenomenal piece of advice. Honestly, that alone makes reading this guide worth it.
It saves a lot of stress.
Okay, let's zoom out and summarize this deep dive.
Yeah.
The main draw here is clear. Indianapolis is offering a really compelling package. You get big city career opportunities, a diverse economy with companies like Salesforce and Eli Lilly, but you are not paying the punishing big city price tag.
Right.
And it is all wrapped up in that welcoming Midwestern hospitality.
And it really brings us back to that crossroads metaphor we talked about at the very beginning.
Yeah, how so?
It is not just about physical highways intersecting. Moving to Indy right now represents this intersection of lifestyle, affordability, and career growth. You do not have to sacrifice your professional ambitions just to be able to afford a home. You can actually have both.
You can have the career and the yard.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
Okay.
We have spent a lot of time today talking about the massive drop in the cost of living if you move from the coast to a place like Indy.
Significant savings.
Right. If you could move to a place where your cost of living dropped that significantly, but your cultural options, the food, the museums, the sports, mostly stayed the same, what would you actually do with that extra freedom and that extra capital?
It is a great question.
Would you invest it? Would you use it to travel the world? Or, and maybe this is the most radical idea of all, would you simply use it to slow down?
Would you buy back your time?
Exactly. Buy back your time. It is definitely something to think about the next time you are quietly scrolling through Zillow listings. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the Indianapolis relocation roadmap. Good luck with the move, and we will catch you next time.